If you're reading this, I finally did it. I finally got this albatross from around my neck. And it's taken a while. Too long, in fact. It was a simple idea, and it's just dragged on, seemingly forever. Many times I thought it wasn't worth it. I had better things to do. But it kept knocking on my door, like a horrible neighbor that only visits in the dead of night. And I kept thinking, what if it's finally time? If you're reading, it's time. It's time to scratch the nagging itch. It's time to confront the beast that only grew larger the more I ignored it. I knew I'll come out unscathed, but I think I'll be changed in some way. But I can't ignore it any longer. With that being said, do your worst. Hey guys, Slacker here. Oh boy, here we go. A video about Pimp My Ride, the game. As I said before, this video has been a long time in the making for literally no reason. It's not for lack of interest, however, even though at the end of the day, what you have here is not something that you wouldn't otherwise expect. The game is bad. Apologies if I spoiled the end result for you, but I figure like one glance at this title and its generic ass box art, and you can tell that this game has budget written all over it. But perhaps you or one of your family members were to pass by this in the discount bin of your local Target or Walmart game section and you would happen to pick it up. What would you have found within? I think Pimp My Ride is a strange enough nugget of cultural curiosity to warrant a closer look. So, let's get pimpin'. Oh my god, am I going to have to describe Pimp My Ride? Okay. Fantastic, I love it. Pimp My Ride aired on MTV from 2004 to 2007, and for me, it was really emblematic of MTV's splasher youth content after Beavis and Butthead, after Jackass, but before Jersey Shore. Things were a little more produced here, long after MTV had already overstayed its welcome as a network that really no longer cared about music content. In my memory, there was like a Saturday night programming block that I watched often with Pimp My Ride, Viva La Bam, and like True Life. In this show, I was introduced to West Coast rapper Exhibit, along with likely the majority of America. Young people living in Los Angeles or Southern California are driving around Los Angeles and Southern California in dilapidated, broken down eyesores and plead the rapper to upgrade their cars. Because of one reason or another, they can't afford to replace or renovate their autos. Most of the time, I feel, it was because they were pursuing some sort of self-improvement, like education or a hobby, that they hope to turn into their career, which takes up most of their available spending money. Sometimes they were just caring and nice people who dedicated most of their paychecks to support someone else. And their friends and family who appeared in the opening and who were often at the end of their ropes about being seen in these wrecks for any longer, usually agreed that nobody deserved having their rides upgraded than the subject of that week's episode. But of course, the owners of the cars are young men and women in the early 2000s in California. They want flash, they want panache, and they want the peacock. And you know what? That's fair enough in my book. So a wild Exhibit would appear and knock on the owner's door. They would freak, then a smiling Exhibit would spend a good portion of time gleefully roasting the shit out of the owner for the state of their car while they nervously deflected or made excuses. And it was great. Then X would joyride the car to the garage, first West Coast Customs, then Gafflin Auto Sports in later seasons. The mechanics would moan about the newest disaster they had to work on, they would huddle up, discussing how to reflect the owner's interest in the car, and then they would work to turn that car into, usually, some sort of overstuffed, over-adorned, gleaming, sparkling, pearlescent monstrosity. The owners would fight back excitement as the garage crew ran down each edition, X would declare them pimped, and you'd get a few closing shots while the newly pimped owner detailed how much more confident and happy with themselves that they felt. Roll credits next episode. Now your parents, most likely your father, upon seeing the show over your shoulder, would tell you they didn't work on the engine or anything, so what's the point if the car doesn't run? And likely this was said in fear that if you were a young, cool teenager like myself, as in easily swayed by advertising and glamorous images, you'd spend your forthcoming paychecks on doing the same to your car when you started driving. However, they definitely had a point. The focus on this show was the most seductive and accessible parts of automobile customization: painting, body kits, electronics, interior additions, and crucially not the stuff that makes the cars go vroom. Post Fast and the Furious, which I feel really brought aftermarket automobile flash to the mainstream, I get the sense that not as many people really cared about what a spoiler or what carbon fiber does so much as that it looks cool, and much less about what's under the hood. Now we'll get back to what they did exactly to the underbelly of these cars on the show later on in this video, but let's talk about aesthetics for a second. The shit that these guys came up with on the show was wild, excessive, and really things you wouldn't necessarily find anywhere else, where cost and, taste might prove too prohibitive. I can't find it anywhere, but there was one episode where I swear the Pimp My Ride guys decided that, since the owner of that week's car worked in construction, that the upholstery should look like, I swear again, a Timberland work boot. So they covered the seats in beige suede and brown leather with gold eyelet and lace detailing. So my hunch is that the mechanics, the artisans, and the engineers featured on the show definitely had skill and talent in their craft, and perhaps all this nonsense was like a challenge. There's that painting, Boy with Flying Squirrel by John Singleton Copley, which is like the biggest big dick painting because he decided to render out metallic, glass, fur, and silk textures in one piece. Pimp My Ride, maybe, just maybe, is a little bit like that. So my appreciation of Pimp My Ride is that it was amusing and memorable, but I don't exactly miss it. I feel as though many would express a similar sentiment. You see Pimp My Ride occasionally in listicles of the best programming MTV has ever put on, especially in the 2000s. Now that sounds crazy as I say it because it's not as though MTV put out groundbreaking content. But I think the idea is to be memorable, and MTV had that in spades. I wanted to spell this out just to say that there's already a basis for this game. You already know what people like about the show. You already know why people watch. And as a company, you're the masters of junk food television. You find something that people latch onto. And like it or not, that's a skill. I don't think the game even needs to be good. Like most of the content MTV airs, you might get a lot of mileage, no pun intended, on just being a weirdly entertaining, curious little game that succeeds on its own merits. So how is Pimp My Ride the game? What is it like to actually play? So game boots and we're presented with an intro cinematic. Digital Exhibit welcomes us to the setting of this game, Pimp City. Really?
Yeah, it's my city. It's called Pimp City, and Pimp City's pretty tight.
Now, X explains that it's his city and that the denizens of Pimp City love their cars, but it's automotively challenged. I guess it's a tale of haves and have-nots here. Your job will be to help out its residents by upgrading the wrecks that they drive around in. However, he also explains that there are sharks in Pimp City's waters. Just by you setting up here, you've already got competition.
So watch your back, because every time you get your hands on a customer's ride, the local rival shop here is also going to get their hands on the same ride to see if they can steal your thunder and your business.
Outpimp them in customizing these rides and you'll make your name and be doing a good thing for all those involved. I hope you didn't skip this intro. That's all you're gonna get. Because you're an Arabesque to Pimp City, X gives you his knockoff Rolls-Royce Phantom to use for your first mission, where you are presented with the car that you will be upgrading, a minimum budget, and a little about the owner. Press OK and steal yourself. Welcome to Pimp My Ride's game mechanics. The experience here is divided in twain. You have basically a money round and a pimping round. In the money round, you drive about and complete activities to make the customer's minimum budget and to help you out in the second half. Now, what can you do to make money? It's a bit tiered, that's how I would describe it. Firstly, you can make money by hitting cars. Run around and smash other people's rides to shake the insurance money right out of them. You get about $10 per hit car, but sometimes maybe you get more. Regardless, this is such a nickel and dime way to earn cash that I both would not recommend making up large gaps in your budget this way, and question why this is even in the game. I would reason that if you're short on cash for a part in this game, you're not going to be able to clear it through bashing spare change from innocent workers on their lunch break for a minute. You can also smash parking meters. These are so inconspicuously placed in the map that I kept forgetting that they were there and that the game actually thinks of this as viable. Parking meters in real life would be more signposted than here. You can also smash billboards, which is like 100% destruction of property. There's a few of them in each level, like more than 5 or 10, but they require you to drive around to find them. And you probably won't want to do that. I don't really get the beef here, haha, with these burger advertisements because it's not like all billboards are bad. There are some sprinkled around that you can't get close to advertising. Nokia? You can run around and take photos of real notable graffiti art through scattered Nokia collectibles. Nokia again! The last activity in this tier is collecting tokens. So there's 5 tokens scattered around the map to spell out pimp. These are not so bad because they show up on your GPS. Speaking of that, there's also a GPS token. Collecting this will help you find a mobile supplier in the next round. We'll have a secret top level part for you to purchase if you can find him, because as his name suggests, he is mobile. There is also a hidden supplier for you to find on this map as well. Like his name suggests, he is hidden, so you have to cruise around until you get a little notification and then honk at him as you pass, because I guess this guy is so antipathetic to work enough to not be present at his garage and you scare him into doing his job. Above that is what this game calls cruise control. You find groups of pedestrians idling about someplace for some reason, and you press and hold R1 to slowly roll past them. You then press a series of buttons in an allotment of time to either thrill the crowd and earn money, or failing that, leave them completely irate. So like, what are we doing here? What is this supposed to be? I could understand it if we were like putting on a show with hydraulics or doing donuts or even revving the engines like some assholes do in Miami. But we're just strolling past and they just chuck money at us. As will be belabored throughout this video, the economics of Pimp City are in complete disarray. The most lucrative activity you can do are 2 mini-games based on the same concept. Ghost Riding the Whip. You get to embarrass yourself in 2 ways. Either timing pressing the circle button and only the circle button as inputs move past your screen, and another where you have to match button or stick inputs before time expires. These earn you a score of Pimpin', Dope, or Busted. Pimpin' or Dope inputs sees a model that ostensibly represents you, the player character, pulling off a dance move that either delights those watching or, failing that again, falling on your face. For both of these activities, you're given a 3-point criteria on how well you did with associated prizes, or simply get pimpin' in the whole mini game and you'll receive the whole enchilada. Easy peasy. Except maybe not. See, your rewards here are way higher than anywhere else. I get the sense that the developers of this game are just really proud of these animations and really want you to see how good their motion capture skills are. Like, the focus here isn't even really on the car, it's on you. These minigames are also weird and finicky despite how simple and straight up how dull they are. Like, they're not difficult at all, but getting a perfect score might be, and it doesn't really feel like it's your fault when you do something wrong. There's also kind of an issue with this, if you're me. Ghostwriting comes from sideshow culture, which is way more of a San Francisco and Oakland thing than a Los Angeles thing. And it may not really seem like it, but that's where the game setting takes most of its inspiration from. Ghostwriting probably had its moment around this time, however, with Bay Area rapper E40's song Tell Me When to Go, which released the year this game did, in 2006.
Ghost ride the whip, ghost ride the whip, ghost ride the whip, ghost ride the whip.
Whether capturing some sort of zeitgeist or not, it's a little bit of an odd inclusion. But this is how you make your money. Nothing is going to compensate you like these minigames. And even if they are kind of a drag to play, they are the most preferable methods for raising capital. Why? Because you don't want to be in these cars as much as you can. These cars handle like complete dog shit. Driving straight up does not feel good here. Now, on first blush, the cars have a bit of weighty and arcadey feeling to them, like they could almost pass for a good game that you've played previously. But when you try to turn, holy shit. Now, in first drafts of this script, I had wrote that the cars are all top speed and acceleration but with no grip, but perhaps isn't that simple. I actually do not know what these cars are doing, but here's my best guess. When you press and hold the circle button, the handbrake, your car kind of drifts, kind of sticks its booty out, but you straighten and you return when you let go of that button and you go back to accelerating. So I think there's some mechanic in place here where the game is helping you drift, like drift assistance, drifting with training wheels. When you hold down that button, you can't really do a 180-degree handbrake turn, you lock into this angled drift for a few seconds. So what this feels like to me is that when I'm driving and I turn, I'm not totally sure what the car is going to do next, and if you hit another car, how the physics will react. Predictably, you're going to slam into a lot of shit. And when you hit a barricade or railing, your car kind of sticks to it for a few seconds before allowing you to back up or roll away. And these maps are filled with curb-high restrictions, barely visible fences, and indestructible objects. So what happens is this. You'll be zipping around and you'll spin off into a vehicle, which might bumper car you into a fence, and you'll be left spinning your wheels fruitlessly as you try to extract yourself. But I guess that's not a big deal. It's not as though the next section will be timed driving or anything. Okay, so Exhibit lets you know that the customer is ready for you to show up, or rather you have enough money to properly kit them out. A cutscene plays where a finely modeled exhibit knocks on the door of the customer's home like in the TV show. Exhibit's got the most finely detailed Converse I've ever seen.
It's been through the ringer.
Or actually, Converse.
Yeah, like 2 or 3.
The voice actors do their best job that they can of reacting with surprise.
Yo, Sandra.
No way! I'm getting pimped!
I'm here to pimp your ride.
I know! Ah, I can't believe
It's my
it!
ride's getting pimped, Sandra, not I'm getting pimped. That means totally different things. An X walks through the scrap heap the customer commutes to and fro in. Now ostensibly, you're supposed to be paying attention to this cutscene, as the areas being highlighted are the areas of greatest concern, and that you would do well enough just addressing those issues.
All I can say is I hope
Oh, someone hit her on the side, I guess, huh? Oh, who that could have been. Now from then, the second part of the game starts. You take the customer's car through the city to find garages to buy parts and upgrade the car. You get 2 minutes to do this, though each stop will give you a little boost of time. Throughout, you can see the progress your competitor is making on their cars. So you'll be running around to different suppliers and picking out what you want to put in your customer's car out of a list that ranges from 1 to 4 stars. 1-star upgrades are less expensive, of course, but the 4-star upgrades pack the most bang. What the fuck is happening here? Why is it shirred? You can then pay full price or play these mini games to, like, I don't know. Maybe you're haggling for a better price. You're saving money by installing them yourself. Despite whatever the sticker price says, you can absolutely run these shopkeepers right out of town if you do this fast enough, which really shouldn't be a challenge. Repeat this process for paint, interiors, electronics, wheels, and custom additions. Along the way, Exhibit might pipe up declaring it challenge time. The clock stops and you have 45 seconds to haul ass to a garage marked on your map to unlock, well, a pretty underwhelming accessory at first. The gimmick here is that there are 3 of these challenges each round, with the last one being the most impressive upgrade. What's funny is that these are not additive, and Exhibit will take away the last thing he gave you for the next part you won. There also might be these times where your opponent decides to send someone after you to ram you off the road, but I suspect they gave the AI the same car handling that you have. Despite this damage challenge happening a couple of times during my playthrough, I only saw the opposing car like once or twice, much less be hit by them. I feel like this prompt would come up and they'd already be crashing or spinning their wheels off somewhere. When you're finished, Exhibit shows off both cars to the customer and runs down what's in each ride.
Check it out, Marcia. Custom hand-stitched calfskin. All for you.
Oh my god, X, I love you so much!
But you know we got 2 customizers working for you, right?
Interior straight up just does not match. The customer chooses which one is their favorite and X declares them pimped. You then move on to the next customer and the process repeats. And that's it. That's the entire game. Oh boy, where do we even begin here? I'd say, despite it being like comparing a bed of tacks to a pile of broken glass, the pimping round is way more compelling than the money round. I actually like this running around that you do, frantically zipping through the city to complete the car customization on time, but perhaps that's more of a product of the horrible driving than a successfully executed concept. See, you're fighting against the vehicle to reach the suppliers, and in any other game, you might be able to go back and fix what's going wrong with your car. Adjust the handling, the types of tires, your brakes. Not in Pimp My Ride the game. I was going to say that I also like when the Exhibit challenge pops up and you have to decide whether to spend this break in the game clock to go out of your way to visit the supplier or to make up for lost time. But then something happened. I decided to visit a supplier for the challenge and the remaining time was added to the clock, so like 30 seconds or something like that. But then I pulled out and I got alerted again, so I just went right on back. And I found myself sitting pretty on like an additional minute 10. I could take all the time in the world to get to the next supplier. And then I got hit by the challenge again. If this happens, it completely breaks what could be compelling gameplay-wise from the sequence, the fight against time. You can practically straight leave the controller for a few to make a coffee and answer a text message. I finished some sessions with minutes on the clock because of this. As well, the upgrades are pretty funny. You can really mess up every car you come across with this shit. You can like put a mechanical bull in a pickup truck here. And it goes away forever after you do it, and it doesn't affect the game in any way, but this is probably the only game around this time where you could really explore that side of car customization. There's like this episode of MTV Cribs where Wyclef Jean of the Fugees showed off a Shark Tank in the back of his Hummer H2, which was like so fucking stupid and awesome if it were in a game. You can't do that to the Escalade and Midnight Club, but here you sort of can. But that's all really that I liked, though I'll surely expand upon them later. When I was replaying Mark Echo's Getting Up, one of the things that actually really made me want to make the video was just how inane the story got after ruminating on it for a few minutes. Here, the thing that I simply cannot wrap my head around is the way the elements of this game interact with each other. Let me try to spell this out. So you have this minimum budget for a customer, a number of ways to reach that budget, a flyover of what the car needs most, a scattering of garages for each part, another set of minigames to lower the price, a competitor to compete against, and a time limit to accomplish all of that within. So we have a timer to add a sense of urgency to the gameplay, but because you might not have enough time given how these cars handle, garages and the exhibit challenges give you more. But then they might give you too much, so there's an option to finish the pimp session early. However, by the way, you cannot restart. If you wanted to, you'd have to exit out and do everything again. To keep you from just zooming through the session off the bat, essentially delivering the customer the same car they just lent you, they added in this competition mechanic, where some crab-ass dude is so bent out of shape by your presence that he bows up to you. However, that's not to say it doesn't prevent you from doing just that. Fuck.
Marcia, you remember your old ride, right? Man, it was finished, but not anymore. Take a look at your brand.
Okay, that did not work.
Come on, let's check it out. Nothing says class like fine leather. Check it out, Marcia.
Oh my god, that is banging! Oh my god, XT was a man.
But you know we got two customizers working for you, right? So check this out. So Marcia,
Wow.
it's decision time. What's it gonna be?
While this competition aspect explains why there are different tiers of upgrades with different price points, it doesn't make any sense because there's only supposed to be one car, the owner's car. And there's no context for why this guy would go out of his way so far out that he purchased an identical ride to the owner's to trick out on his own dime. What does he get out of this? And what are we getting out of this for that matter? So we have this bar set up, the minimum budget, that essentially sets the price for the total overhaul of the car. You get this benchmark, but you won't actually know how much the upgrades will all cost until you reach the next round, and you can only go back by resetting the entire level and starting at square one. If you have a hole in your sheet to get that final part, well, good luck bashing cars with the time that you have. So you pretty much need to complete at least the 2 ghost riding minigames to reach that minimum, but the price that the parts are initially offered at might be too high to fully kit the car out. So then you play these install games to drive down the sticker price. But those games aren't hard at all, so even if you're going for max level and all the upgrades, that still might leave you at the end with a crazy surplus of capital. You don't get any bonus or reward for money saved, and you get zeroed out at the beginning of each new customer. And maybe you wanted to save up to specifically target a customer's particular area of concern. Well, the time limit will have you plotting out how to hit the garages in a line as opposed to what they need you to fix the most. And there's no way to remind or refresh yourself on what those concerns are. So your default strategy in this game is simply complete everything in the money round and then just go for the maximum upgrades offered, which should already have been your intentions from the jump. So it may seem obvious, but this is way more of a gameplay padding strategy than anything that's cohesive. You're time gated for the first part of the game, then have to wrestle the controls to suppliers who offer you upgrades, and 80% of the work that the developers took to put them in the game are wasted because you wouldn't even consider them. Then you play a section that makes a mockery of the time you spent crashing into billboards and watching your player character do a jig in front of a crowd. Why did they even bother? Almost like the cars on Pimp My Ride itself, it feels like they started off with this basic, badly handling urban racer and then bolted all of these mechanics superficially on top of it. And I feel like they could have cut out so much fat by not even bothering with a minimum or even a money round. If the player had the autonomy to do what they wanted to these cars without some sort of arbitrary star system in place or a monetary threshold they had to cross beforehand, I feel like it might have worked out a lot better. Like if there was simply a blanket time of 10 minutes and players could earn as they please to unlock better cosmetics, and instead of haggling for a price, those upgrades would be trickier to install, which would affect your final rating. Like give the player the opportunity to craft the car that they want or that they think looks best or amuses them the most. Don't curtain out what you, the developer, thinks is an inferior upgrade to another behind a star system and a time limit, because otherwise why is it in the game? The biggest elephant in the room regarding Pimp My Ride is this. I already mentioned that the show has a primer on what people like about it and why they tune in. Well, really, it doesn't have anything to do with driving. The show is about cosmetics and stupid extras, and the game really only needed to be that. But this game is, at its core, a racing title, and a bad one at that. And the question is why? Why did this need to be a racing game? If the developer was really going to be lifting elements of car culture that have nothing to do with performance, like ghostwriting, then why couldn't this be a sideshow game? The customization and display elements of the game, what is integral to the show, are what you do the least in this game. With that out of the way, let's move on to the next part of analyzing the game. The story. There is no story in Pimp My Ride the game, but we can talk about setting, the aesthetics, and the customers you interact with as the game progresses. It may not need to be said, but the scenes outside of your car window are bland as hell. They legit named this place Pimp City and we're in Great Value, Southern California. Each customer you complete expands or moves around the map a bit, relocating the suppliers. Soon after you complete the first few customers, you're whisked off to Pimp City's shitty industrial section. So why does Pimp City have a shitty industrial sector? Dude, look at this place. It's dreary as hell. The sky is overcast, characters are walking around in hard hats. What about Pimp City, with any inkling of aspirational currency that name implies, needed them to throw in a manufacturing hub? Not only that, but the maps that are located here tend to be long and skinny, and you best fucking believe that they put suppliers on each end of the map. You spend a lot of pimping rounds in this place, charging down straightaways. But I do appreciate how quickly the game reveals the oddities of its design as far as the play area goes. Like for example, you see this? That is an interchange and it goes nowhere. There's highways that just lead to invisible walls, but you still have to navigate it to reach suppliers, occasionally forcing you to drive on roads against traffic. Huh? Why is this even here? There's also a strange tunnel that connects this area to the sunny side of the map, where the road suddenly ends and you're driving on an unmarked, possibly unpaved road with no other traffic. It's so weird, and considering these two things, you might get a particular feeling. So if you're charitable, you might say that the developers maybe ran out of time and money and that the map was going to be bigger than these little sawn-off sections for each customer, perhaps even an open world. Or you might say, they may have taken an existing map, chopped it up for this game, slapped Pimp City on everything, and called it a day. Either way, it's pretty ironic when you think about the developer of this game. This game was developed by Technics, who would go on to develop the infamous Ride to Hell Retribution, which is way worse than this game. That game had plans to be an open-world outlaw biker game, melding Sons of Anarchy with Grand Theft Auto and set during the Vietnam War. Instead, it became horribly linear, with the aspirations showing off in a pretty repulsive light. Tons of invisible walls, forced resets if you strayed too far off path, and all the bugs and broken mechanics that worm their way into your game when your open-world sandbox gets diced Goodfellas style into slivers of gameplay beats. By the way, I would not do that. By the way, I wouldn't chop garlic that thin. It just browns and burns too easily. But what makes that game worse is that the ideas that Technics implemented to substantiate how badass they wanted the world to be. Because even if everything worked as it should, the wanton and aimless tastelessness of that game, like its frankly embarrassing sex scenes as health regeneration mechanic, would probably still find few supporters over the age of 14, either physically or mentally. but without anything to do with that, without really thinking that any company deserves anything unless they've shown themselves to be reprehensible as far as culture or actions go, you can't help but thinking that going from Pimp My Ride to Ride to Hell is anything short of providential. Back to Pimp My Ride. As you ride around, you're treated to a soundtrack that I would characterize as waiting music, or better than nothing. Now, games like this, in this sort of arena, usually have good soundtracks as their one redeeming characteristic. And you know what I mean. Those games that are kinda bad, but have that one song, that earworm that you've only heard there and never since.
I just thought you should know that this is what I am.
Obviously, it's not important, but it can be such a quality of life factor, and unless I'm wrong, a pretty easy win. Here we get choice cuts from the most generic urban hip-hop beats album picked at random from the catalog. There are a few actual songs here, one of which stuck out until I realized it was also in Need for Speed Most Wanted. And then we have songs that the man himself Exhibit are on. And boy, do they not hit the spot. The cars and customers you meet over the course of this game are pretty standard MTV demos, representing the people who might have appeared on the show or watched the show and their dream rides. There's a rocker in her pickup truck, there's artists, there's rappers, there's DJs, there's surfers. And the cars kind of run parallel to that. The Japanese import, the aforementioned pickup truck, the standard sedan, a van. Just because it's all kind of generic doesn't mean there aren't some elements of this game that amuse me. They legit call this paint job Horny Heifer. For instance, there's a customer, Leon, who is tough as hell and is driving around in a sort of 70s muscle car. Oh my god, the jorts! Oh my god! And you can really give him all that tribal tattoo bullshit on his exterior and interior. What the fuck? Then turn around and give him a whole ass miniature garden in his trunk because he says one of his hobbies is horticulture. That's pretty fucking good to me. You can tell there's only a few points of serious effort in this game, and the custom parts are one of them. It's just a shame that more aren't as interesting. I got pretty frustrated somewhat with the lack of imagination put into some of these upgrades. For every wild and outlandish custom part, there's an underwhelming paint and body option. But these aren't real cars, even though the developers took the time to make fake logos for all of them. These aren't real cars and these aren't real parts. Why isn't the envelope being pushed further? We're rushing through the streets at 150 miles per hour with nitrous and a damn surf ban. So why should there be really any concession to realistic customization? As far as customers go, the game throws you 3 curveballs. That being, customers that seem to fall outside who would typically be catered to by Pimp My Ride. As in, they don't seem too youth culture-y. They don't seem like they would be interested in having a runway be put into their pickup truck. The first is Nah, who says that he's interested in stocks and career success, and is probably on Twitter right now complaining about a Bored Ape being stolen from his MetaMask wallet. There's Vinny, who's here to fill the New York quota.
I don't know what to think about this.
It's a classic. You know, back in the day, this thing turned a lot of heads.
And now the only thing it turns is stomachs.
He's supposed to be operating an independent cab out of a total fucking wreck, and alright, Vinny, I think I see the problem with your business. But I threw this guy the bone and gave him the crazy taxi treatment. And finally, there's Lucas. Lucas is the penultimate customer in the game, the customer with the highest budget, and the customer who is unlocked all on his own. So you have to wonder, what treat does this game have in store for you? So I'm going to go ahead and let the customer intro to Lucas play out in its entirety.
This definitely looks bad, but it's from the 70s. It's supposed to look bad. Lucas?
X to the Z, the pimper of rides.
Hey, you gotta get up. This looks weird. Come on, man. I'm here to pimp your ride. So what's the occasion for the costume?
I was just in the basement searching for the Vestal Orb.
Ah, the Vestal Orb. You can never have too many of those. Now what happened to your paint job?
It got scratched when I tried to make a drawbridge up there.
Yeah, because everybody needs a drawbridge too. So what kind of car is this?
This is a 1972 Passion wagon.
1972 is probably the last time this wagon saw any passion. Well, yo, what is all this?
Well, you gotta have Galgarath with you when you roll, you know?
That's what you don't do. You don't roll with Galgarath. All right, Lucas, I can see this is a desperate situation for many reasons. Let me get those keys from you.
Look at this pale, portly loser coming to the door in his D&D getup. Look at this nerd obsessed with his dumb little virgin role-playing games while you play a cool game, like Pimp My Ride the game. Guess what, buckaroo? I'm pretty sure this is what the devs think of you, the player. I also wouldn't be surprised if this is what the devs think of you as well. By this point, you've sunk hours into fighting against the very cars you're meant to upgrade, either sincerely, ironically, or as quickly as possible, and this is your reward. Servicing the geekiest of all geeks on Pimp My Ride no less by giving him a fantasy mobile while your dumbass is sitting and playing this mediocre game. They legit threw in this character for you to scoff at. They threw in this character to be a yardstick. You're supposed to measure the distance between him and yourself. You're supposed to say, I'm glad I'm not that. And they did this in Pimp My Ride the game. That's crazy. I don't know what they expected here. This is the penultimate character, I said, so after you finish him off, you're on to the finale. The last customer is Exhibit. He says he's been impressed with what you've done so far, but now here's the real challenge, where you unseat the master as the pupil. You're going to take his knockoff Phantom around for a final pimping. But this isn't a two-stage affair like the others. You are given 4 minutes to whip this thing around the city, and you have to hit every one of the garages. This isn't about star quality, this is just about completion. Despite the title screen saying that X has an NA budget, you actually have $10,000. Is this hard-coded in? Why do I have 10K? Each upgrade costs $1,000? Is this necessary? Exhibit, can't you pay these guys in full for their work? You're also given 1 hit of nitrous, which you have probably used previously to send your car careening into a bunch of traffic and then spinning off into a fence. But here, there are no additional nitrous collectibles. Visiting the suppliers do not add anything to your time like they previously did, and there are no challenges to pause the clock. So basically, all of the mechanics you have learned to compensate for the terrible driving are now off the table, and you have to depend solely on your ability to control this vehicle. The run you have to make here needs to be almost perfect. No spinning out, no reversing, and no missed turns. Dude. Hey yo, what the fuck? This couldn't be a worse move for this game, and at the end, you still have a knockoff Phantom, now perhaps in a different color. And you might think that every car kind of looks the same when you're done with it, but this is the final customer of Pimp My Ride the game, and the man has no budget. In the first fucking customer, we were putting real diamonds in their rims. This should be the blingiest pile of shit rolling down the road, and it really didn't change. Wait, why are all of these 3-star? This is the finale. What? I don't get it. So again, I need to ask, why is the focus on racing these cars? After you do this, Exhibit says, "Good job, Player 1. My people need me now. I'm off to pimp more rides."
You did it, man. You pimped the city. But it's not over. It's a big world out there, and there's work to be done. The world isn't gonna pimp itself. But if I need some help, I know exactly where to come. King of Pimps.
Game end. As for you, player, well, now you're back in the trap. Just that. Trapped. Go on, marinate on that for a minute. Okay, so game bad, but unfortunately not amusingly bad or spectacularly bad. The game is the worst kind of bad. It's boringly bad. The few moments of amusement I had with this game came after so much struggle. Now in my memory, the PS2 was absolutely right for this type of stuff, that I don't think was really matched until the Wii. Companies expanding their IP to uncharted and, well, unwelcomed territory. But I maintain that Pimp My Ride as a concept holds water as an amusing niche idea that people could laugh at and have fun with. Retooled as anything but a racing game, this would definitely work today for $10 or $20 on Steam, even if it had the fidelity of any other shitty game featured on, like, Graze Still Plays. But let's go a little deeper and a little sadder. Let's talk about behind the scenes of Pimp My Ride as a show. In February of 2015, one of my most trusted news sources, the Phone Bed Post, published an article titled, "Here's What Really Happened to the Cars from Pimp My Ride." They talked to 3 men who got their rides pimped, 1 from Season 4 and 2 from Season 6, as the show transitioned from West Coast Customs to Gafflin Autosports. Now, the article does note that all of the people spoken to about Pimp My Ride ultimately had mostly positive experiences, and the interactions with Exhibit, however brief, gave them the impression that he was a chill, fun guy that just smoked a lot of weed, which is fair enough. Extreme Makeover Car Edition, this was not. The article was re-reported on by several other news channels, often with histrionic titles like this one from The Vulture. Pimp My Ride, like your entire childhood, was a lie. The reality, however, is sort of a downer, but it's kind of what you might expect. Now, most obviously, the producers of the show had a bigger hand in how the show was shot than what might otherwise be inferred. The reactions of participants to Exhibit knocking on their door, along with the final reveal of the car, were tweaked with suggestions and prompting by the production staff of the show. So what you might have seen was not honest excitement for the final product. As another example, some of the damage of the cars before they got scooped up, the derelict nature of them, were, in some cases, exaggerated by the crew as well, to look worse. Now that to me honestly is kind of funny. That's petty as hell. To throw the restoration in further relief, the cars got banged up more so the viewer can point and say, "How did you let this get this bad?" Okay, I will note, that's not to say that there wasn't some kind of fuck shit happening behind the scenes. For instance, for one of the participants, a larger gentleman, production dumped bags of candy in his car to make him look like he was that slovenly, and they gave him a cotton candy machine. So, why? Come on, y'all. But most importantly, some of the upgrades put into the cars and shown on TV were removed after the show ended. This is because some of the upgrades weren't ultimately safe or street legal. The car shown might be more like a concept or demonstration, like what you might find at a trade show. And biggest of all, illuminating a big question around the show itself, participants said that crucial repairs to the internal components of their cars were often not addressed. So, if your ride was a shitty Ford Taurus, what you got back at its core was the same shitty Ford Taurus. The show makes it look like the process of upgrading the car might take a week or so, when really, the garage might hold the car for months, forcing the participants to perhaps have to rent cars for the duration that it was under maintenance. Now, MTV did eventually reimburse one of the men featured for his rental car, but the point of the matter is that it was not due to laziness on the part of the owner for why their cars were in such a sorry state. So it's kind of fucked up that you have this extended period of time only for the owner to get the car back, possibly in a worse internal state than what was given. In light of all of this, it's strangely compelling that Pimp My Ride, the game, would be a tiresome slog. Bells and whistles can only go so far and can't really change the core of what's going wrong. Even though the 3 men generally enjoyed the experience, despite one expressing some regrets due to the frustrations of life during and post-show, it wasn't like a magical improvement in a rough-looking spot in their life where everything now works as it should. It's not the excitement of the show's participants that are captured in this game, it's the lengthy, arduous process to get something that looks nice that you're ultimately disappointed with, and you question whether or not it was worth it. The show illustrates that there is skill and talent needed for those shiny things that you see on the exterior, but it should serve cohesively and supplementary to what gives those things purpose. Without that core, the work is just flash. Just to wrap this up, Pimp My Ride had one final sting waiting for me. See, I got perfect on every customer. I didn't collect everything or 100% the levels by smashing all the billboards, but I got perfect. What that means is that every customer got the max level of upgrades available to them in all 3 exhibit challenges. To do this, you need to at least beat all the ghostwriting minigames, collect all GPS tokens, find the hidden supplier in all stages to get the rare unlock. I did that. And you know what I got? Nothing! No congratulations screen, no reward, no secret unlock. I got fucking nothing. You could say we got what we deserved, or you could say that we all deserve better. The people who played this game deserved better. The fans deserved better. Pimp My Ride deserved better. And certainly the participants on Pimp My Ride deserved better as well. But perhaps nobody deserved better than you, Exhibit. But you were the lucky one. You got to leave. I hope you're doing well out there. I hope you're content with what you left. I'm happy you got to leave Pimp City. I just wish you took us with you. Love, Slackerite.